A Trump-backed candidate in for Michigan Secretary of State's office is on the record warning Americans about STDs. No, not those STDs. Sexually transmitted demons.
If a person has demonic possession, I know it's going to sound really crazy me saying that for some people. They're gonna be like, what? But having intimate relationships with people who are demonically possessed or oppressed, I strongly believe that a person opens themselves up to possession. Demonic possession is real.
Look, okay, let me just say this. We're going to start out with saying how I love how there is a tiny hint of self-realization. Hey, look, y'all, I'm about to say something that's really crazy. Okay, then why are you saying it? For one, and secondly, why do you actually believe it? And hey, you know what? You delivered, so I guess promises made, promises kept. Wow. Sexually transmitted demons. I'm not sure if Trojan has a condom for that one. They might want to get on it. Can you imagine, like, going into business and selling, like, demonic-proof condoms to these people? I swear it would almost be like, I was going to say selling, ketchup to a woman in white gloves. So you have to be a really good salesperson. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a woman in white gloves. It could be anybody with white gloves. But you have to be a really good salesman. But for them, they might be stupid enough to buy it from you anyway. Hey, have you heard of these condoms? They prevent demonic possession. They are covered in holy water. Dipped in some holy water, okay? So that, you're holy when you're getting it on. When you're doing the dirty, you can do it clean. Catholics wouldn't be able to use a demon-proof condom. It's insane. It's insane. All right, but there's more. She's not done yet. She also talked about abortion, of course, seeing as how we recently had the ruling on Roe, but this was actually from her podcast 2020, 2021. So these are earliest before the end of Roe, while Republicans were still attempting to do that, and while she was doing her podcast. Here's what she said about that. She basically called it child sacrifice. Quote, when people in other cultures, when they engage in child sacrifice, they didn't just sacrifice for the child for the sake of bloodshed. Again, there's no one that does that. Sacrificing children for bloodshed. What is this? She said they sacrificed a child because they were hoping to get prosperity. And that's precisely why people have abortion now. Because I'm not ready. I don't want to have a baby. Again, perfectly valid reasons to have an abortion. I don't feel like it. Again, another valid reason. I don't have time. I want to make more money. I want my freedom. Again, all completely valid reasons to not have a baby. But as she's going to say, so you're sacrificing that child and hoping to get something out of their death? Which is your freedom, your happiness, your prosperity? No, okay, so wait a minute. We're pro-freedom, except, we don't want you, if you're a woman and, you're pregnant, we don't want you to have your freedom, we don't want you to have your happiness, and we don't want you to have your prosperity. But we're the party of freedom. Interesting. So look, the through line that underlines all of these arguments that she makes is basically this. People like her believe that babies, children, pregnancies are a punishment for having sex. That is your punishment. How dare you lay down and have sex outside of procreation? Now you are going to be punished by being forced to procreate. That's the underlying thought behind all of this. It is a punishment for sexual activity. Not something that to be born out of love. No, no. Again, you decided to lie down, and here's your consequences. Now raise this child for life and be unhappy and, be thrust into poverty. Now, look, we talk about the mother a lot for good reason, of course. It's an incredibly important part of this conversation, but there's not a lot of conversation about the kid. What kind of life that child is going to have in the first place. If it's going to be a good life. If you're going to have a quality of life. You know what I'm saying? And so, look, when it comes to having unwanted children, how do you think that's going to affect that child? Probably not in a good way if you're sitting in, if you're having a family that is already dealing with poor economic conditions, having that exacerbated by another child, having the misery, lost opportunities for parent and child. And that's assuming that they're, parent and child are both healthy. And the child isn't born with any, disabilities or anything like that can definitely have an impact on the quality of life for both parent and child. But all of that, by the way, is second to the case of bodily autonomy. That's the biggest consideration in all of this, okay? So now she has every right to make the decision for herself. What she does not have the right to do is to make that decision for anyone else. That literally is the core of bodily autonomy. And I think that's really important to point out. Now, the other thing that's interesting is calling it child sacrifice. Really? Again, Roe basically set up a time framing system before fetal viability. Meaning that, of course, if this fetus cannot survive outside the womb, it is not considered an independent life. And the science backs all of that. And so what you have here is, in many cases, a clump of cells, a fetus that is a zygote, that is not alive. And that's even according to their own definitions from the Bible, which they say life begins at first breath. And so, but no, it's child sacrifice. And again, the vast majority of abortions are performed in the early stages of pregnancy. But again, she calls it child sacrifice. So that's kind of like making an omelet chicken sacrifice. Or, or trying to present batter of like brownies as a fully formed and cooked brownie. Like, imagine like going to a bake-off with these people, and they'll bring in. I mean, you could probably bring in like a bowl of, cake mix and all the ingredients to say, what are you talking about? This is a cake. It's a fully formed, fully cooked cake. Why don't you dig in? It's the same thing, and that's really the argument, that they say that these cells are a complete and fully formed human, which again, the Bible doesn't even agree. And not only that, but the Bible also teaches people how to induce an abortion. So again, the whole thing is just ridiculous and based on a lot of falsehoods. But there's more. She also goes on to make anti-LGBTQ comments, and even accuses couples who cohabitate before marriage. She accuses them of trying to open the door to people who want to normalize pedophilia. What? What does any of that have to do with the other things? That doesn't make any sense. Now, it would be very easy to write her off as insane because she sounds like an insane person. But understand that this is considered to be a mainstream position in the Republican Party, for one. But it really is a good example as well of what happens when fundamentalists a complete misunderstanding of your own religion and this fundamental interpretation of the religion, the effect that that has in your brain. So, I mean, and again, getting back to the fact that this is mainstream in the Republican Party, she's been endorsed by former President Donald Trump. And so this is where they're at. Okay? This is where Republicans are. They've completely lost touch with any values of freedom. They say they're in favor of freedom. They're not actually not in favor of freedom. They're in favor of freedom for corporations, freedom for white people, men, specifically white Christian men. But when it comes to everybody else, well, their freedoms come second. And they can have them as long as they don't impact me. Well, that's not real freedom. That's not real liberty. And they're not living in reality.